Airlines move billions of passengers each year and operate some of the most advanced machines ever built. They coordinate thousands of flights a day and connect almost every major city on Earth. But despite their scale and importance, commercial airlines rarely earn steady profits. For much of aviation history, the industry has struggled to break even. To understand why, we need to look beyond the aircraft and examine the structure of the business itself. Commercial aviation is among the most capital-intensive industries in the world. A single aircraft can cost more than $100 million, and major airlines operate fleets in the hundreds. They rely on complex scheduling systems, global networks, skilled labor, and airports capable of handling high-volume operations. Despite this sophistication, airlines sell what many passengers view as a commodity, a seat that gets them from one place to another. In economics, a commodity market is one where products are largely interchangeable, pushing buyers to choose primarily based on price. Several structural characteristics define the airline business. Airlines face high fixed cost, expenses that remain constant regardless of how many passengers fly, and low marginal costs, meaning the cost of adding one more passenger to a scheduled flight is minimal. They also operate in a market shaped by heavy competition, volatile fuel prices, strict regulations, and demand swings tied to economic conditions. These forces create an environment where margins are thin. Small disruptions can erase entire quarters of earnings. Understanding why requires looking at how airlines actually operate. Airlines must cover aircraft purchases or leases, crew salaries, maintenance, insurance, and airport fees, whether flights are full or nearly empty. These costs don't scale down when demand falls. Even grounded aircrafts generate expenses. Once a flight is scheduled, adding another passenger contributes little additional cost, mostly fuel, baggage handling, and basic services. This makes seat occupancy critical. Every empty seat represents lost revenues that can't be recovered once the plane departs. Because passengers often see airlines as interchangeable, price becomes the primary decision factor. This reflects price elasticity, where demand shifts noticeably when prices change. When one airline lowers fares, competitors usually match quickly. This creates downward pressure on prices and squeezes margins industry-wide. Airlines typically operate hub and spoke systems or point-to-point networks. These networks depend on tight scheduling. One delay can ripple across the entire system, raising costs and forcing reassignments of aircraft and crew. Networks also require airlines to operate flights that may be marginal or unprofitable because they feed passengers into more profitable routes. The network as a whole matters more than the economics of any single flight. Airline demand responds sharply to economic cycles, geopolitical events, and health crises. A slowdown in business travel, a spike in oil prices, or severe weather can result in immediate losses. Fuel is often an airline's second largest expense after labor. Prices fluctuate unpredictably. When fuel costs rise, airlines cannot always adjust fares fast enough, especially on competitive routes. Airlines employ highly skilled workers such as pilots, mechanics, and flight attendants. Labor agreements are negotiated through unions and often include annual raises and specific work rule protections. These contracts limit flexibility and keep costs rigid, even in downturns. Taken together, these structural features make profitability difficult. Airlines operate with high commitments, intense competition, and limited ability to adapt quickly when conditions change. American Airlines demonstrates how these structural pressures play out inside a large carrier. In the 2010s, American modernized its fleet, improving fuel efficiency but taking on significant debt. High leverage increases vulnerability to demand shocks and interest rate changes. When revenue falls, debt payments continue. American's hub and spoke system, centered in cities like Dallas, Charlotte, and Miami, creates operational efficiency when flights run smoothly. But disruptions can cascade through hubs, amplifying delays and increasing costs. American competes with other legacy carriers and with low-cost airlines such as Southwest and Spirit. These low-cost carriers operate simpler fleets, use lower-cost airports, and offer fewer services. Their cost advantage forces American to match fares even when its own expenses are higher. After covering fuel, labor, maintenance, and debt service, American's margins remain narrow. High overhead leaves little room for error. Even strong years can be undone quickly by rising costs or a demand dip. American illustrates a central truth. Scale and brand recognition do not overcome the structural challenges built into the airline business. The COVID-19 pandemic triggered one of the steepest declines in aviation history. Passenger demand fell more than 90% in weeks. Airlines could not cut costs at the same pace. Aircraft leases still required payment. Debt obligations remained. Storing and maintaining idle aircraft added costs. Labor contracts restricted rapid workforce reductions. For American, already carrying significant debt, the collapse created a liquidity crisis. The company depended on government support and large private financing packages to continue operating. The crisis exposed the industry's fragility. Airlines depend on steady demand to cover high fixed costs. When demand evaporates, the cost structure cannot adjust quickly enough. Even after traffic returned, servicing the additional debt accumulated during the crisis limited profitability. The pandemic didn't create the industry's weaknesses. It highlighted ones that had been present for decades. The airline industry shows how certain economic structures constrain long-term performance, regardless of strategy. Airlines have attempted many solutions to improve profitability. Fleet simplification, loyalty programs, network redesigns, ancillary revenue such as fees for bags, seats, etc., premium cabin upgrades, and mergers and consolidations. These strategies may help at the margins, but they don't change the underlying constraints. First, airlines operate with high fixed costs, commitments that must be paid regardless of demand. Second, demand is highly elastic, meaning small price differences can shift passengers between carriers. At the same time, air travel behaves like a commodity, with limited differentiation on most routes. The industry is also exposed to constant external volatility, from fuel prices to economic cycles and geopolitical events. Operational flexibility is limited by regulation and labor agreements. And finally, airline networks are deeply interconnected, so a single disruption can affect the entire system. These forces narrow the path to consistent profitability. When the system works well, airlines can earn modest returns. When anything goes wrong, losses accumulate quickly. The industry is shaped more by structural economics than by management decisions. Airlines enable global travel and operate with remarkable precision. But beneath the surface, the economics of aviation create a business where profitability is difficult to sustain. Understanding why airlines rarely make money requires looking beyond individual carriers and examining the structure that governs the entire industry. A structure defined by high commitments, volatile demand, and limits on differentiation.